Good morning, Louise,
Morning, Rob.
and morning to everybody else who are watching this episode of God is Supernatural. Our verse is 1 Corinthians 2:4. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power. That's where it lies, God's power, not human wisdom. Now, we're often talking about healings and deliverances and just some of the miracles that God does through all of us because we are empowered to do that. But we don't often talk about the interior world of the spirit, that place where we meet with God. In Philippians 3:3, Paul is writing to the Philippians, and he's saying these meaty words. He says, look out for the dogs, look out for the evildoers, look out for those who mutilate the flesh. What is he talking about? He's talking about people who try to get close to God through self-effort. I mean, that's essentially what he's talking about. And Paul says, we don't need to do that. That's not the way that we connect with God. And in verse 3, he says, for we are the circumcision who worship by the Spirit of God. In other words, if you and I are going to connect with God, then it has to be by my Spirit contacting God who is Spirit. That's how spiritual connection takes place. Self-effort, trying to do a whole load of things, trying to please God in our human effort will never do that. It's simply living, spirit has to contact spirit. So it's my spirit contacting God who is spirit. And when you and I do that, at that point, we are in the same realm the same sphere where God lives, which is kind of crazy, isn't it, Louise?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely mind blowing.
it is mind-blowing that here we are in the natural and in the flesh, but there's a place in us that actually we're connecting with God in the sphere that He resides in. So uh, the thing about that is that that place is underexplored in Western culture and in Western Christianity. We kind of do relationship often by reading through the word, through our intellect, which is still fleshly rather than spirit connecting to God who is spirit. But we've had some lovely experiences where people have really gone into that realm in a fresh way and in a new way. So we're going to just talk about some of those right now and hopefully inspire you in your own walk with God. So last week we were doing one of our Kingdom First courses, and we had a couple of ladies who we invited the Holy Spirit onto them, and they just had amazing experiences. So one lady, it just felt like she went up to a different level. So just talking about levels tells you that there's dimension to this spiritual world. But the other lady it was much more striking because as the spirit settled on her, she became incredibly still. I mean, just her whole body stilled to a statue-like um, manifestation. It looked like she had departed. Really, I mean, it looked like her body was in a place of hibernation, stasis, and her eyes actually seemed to sink just deeper into their sockets, and her breathing slowed. And that's what it was looking like from the outside, and just in a place of stasis. And then when the prayer time had ended, she said, I could hear you guys praying, but it felt like I'd gone to a different place and, I'd gone to this different place in the spirit. And you were there. I could hear you praying, but you were sounded really far away. And then I came back. That's a great example of spirit connecting with spirit and being in that sphere where God resides and something happening.
Yeah, amazing because you could have looked at her and thought nothing is happening and maybe stop praying. And I think I've been learning more and more that we don't need to understand what is happening. If the Holy Spirit is there and is moving, just, let Him do that and let Him get on with that. He knows more than anybody what He's doing. And I guess we had that with a guy that we prayed for actually just last night. So we were focusing on being reliant on the Holy Spirit, and not doing things in our own strength.
Yeah.
And we took turns in praying for one another. He wanted to be bolder. And I felt, we asked the Holy Spirit to come, and the Holy Spirit was obviously present on him. He looked really peaceful. And I felt led to encourage the three of us that were praying to pray in tongues out loud, which I don't actually do that often,
Yeah.
but we did it. And again, he just looked really peaceful. It didn't look like anything particular was going off. But after we finished praying, and he came round and spoke to us, he said it was like bolts of electricity were going right through his whole body.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful. And he felt like he was being lifted up from the earth, and he could see us praying for him.
Yeah.
And he could also see a light going up out of the earth. And I actually also had a picture of him standing on a hand being lifted up as well. And even after we finished praying, I think he was still buzzing.
It
Like
was. Gosh, it
it,
was.
yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. Um, and so what's interesting is that there are these dimensions of location. So the lady the previous week had felt she'd gone to another
Mm,
place. He felt he was lifted up. And I did ask him, I asked him, was that in your mind's eye? Or did it really feel like a location move? And it certainly, I mean, he wasn't quite able to be quite so precise, but it didn't sound like it just in his mind's eye, kind of a
no,
theoretical thing or a mental image. It felt like a spiritual
yeah,
event that happened to him. Um, so you get that sense of there is location and dimension. Didn't come out necessarily on that one, but you can also get a sense of velocity, and it begins to tell us that this interior world has dimension to it. It has height and it has breadth and it has depth. And of course, it's also peopled with the beings who live in the heavenly realm, primarily God, but much more than God. Um, yeah, I mean, gosh, that's a whole topic on its own, isn't it?
yeah. And then you don't know that there's probably transformation going on in that individual as well, which I
Yeah.
guess you see the fruit at a later date.
No, and I think that's actually a really important point, Louise. I'm glad you mentioned it because when Paul talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind,
Mm,
when we see Jesus being transfigured, it comes from this world, comes from God's world. So, so yeah, the lady last week, she felt she was in a different place, but it wasn't like God was saying anything. It was like you're being with him, and that's enough. The more time you and I spend in that place, the more that transformation takes place. There is that metabolic change happening by the
mm,
Spirit that is transforming our bodies and our minds and our personalities. Um, yeah,
yeah,
so we really do need to aspire to spend a great deal of time there.
yeah. We definitely need transforming.
We do. And that's the place where it happens, guys. So I want to encourage you. You're not going to be transformed by just doing a lot more. That's not where it happens. Transformation, spiritual transformation has to happen by the Spirit. So it means connecting with God by your Spirit and spending time there. And actually, Louise, you also had raised something earlier, which was also quite important, which is we don't necessarily understand. Usually we don't really understand
No,
what's happening. But what do we need to do?
we just need to go with it. I keep getting this image of it's like when you put your trust in a surgeon to do surgery. You don't understand everything that he's going to do to you, but you have complete faith that he's going to do a good job and he's going to fix whatever the problem is. And that's almost how it is when we surrender to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, childlike trust in our Father.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Louise, thank you so much. Guys, be encouraged in your walk with God. 2024, there is more in 2024. God bless you. See you next week.